The biggest barrier to playing lead sheets is being able to read and play the vast array of different chord symbols. But every chord symbol in this book, no matter how bonkers it looks, can be simplified into a simple 3-note shape, which is easy to work out and play, and still contains the essential sound of the chord. The name of this magical shape is the root 3rd and 7th shell, and it's where every beginner should start when they're learning to play jazz chords. I'm going to show you how to find this shape for every chord symbol in this book. I'm going to give you a drill for getting it into your fingers and your brain, and I'm going to show you how to put it in context and play it with a melody on an actual tune. I've also taken all the essential information in this video and distilled it onto a single side of A4 cheat sheet, which you can download, print out, and just have next to you when you're working out a new tune, so that all the information you need to work out these different chord symbols will be right there for you, and you can find that in the description. Okay, let's do it. We'll start with the basic chords, major 7s, minor 7s, and dominant 7s. We'll be playing all of these chords in our left hand so that our right hand is free to play the melody. Okay, let's start with major 7 chords. To find a root 3rd and 7th shell for C major 7, we start with the root in the pinky. And then major 7 chords have a major 3rd, which is 4 semitones above the root. 1, 2, 3, 4. And a sharp 7th, which is 1 semitone below the root. So to find that, we jump up to the root above and then come down 1 semitone. With that simple formula, we can now play any major 7 chord as a left hand root 3rd and 7th shell. For example, F sharp major 7. Roots, 3rd is plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7th is minus 1, up to the root and down 1. F sharp major 7. Let's now do the formulas for minor 7 chords and dominant 7 chords. To find a root 3rd and 7th shell for C minor 7, we again start with the root in the pinky, and then minor 7 chords have a minor 3rd, which is 3 semitones above the root. So that's 1, 2, 3. And a flat 7th, which is 2 semitones below the root. So up to the root above and down 1, 2. And finally, to find a root 3rd and 7th shell for a C dominant 7 chord, it's root in the pinky, and then a major 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a flat 7th, up to the root and down 1, 2. Knowing the 3rds and 7ths of major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7 chords is the foundation upon which all your other chord knowledge is going to be built. So our big first job when we're learning to play jazz chords is just to memorize the formulas for these 3 basic chords and then get good at finding them on the keys. And good news, we can do all of that with this simple exercise. So let's have a go at it. Our first chord is D minor 7, so that's a D root, and minor 7 chords have a minor 3rd, so that's 1, 2, 3, and a flat 7th, so up to the root and down 1, 2. Next is G dominant 7, so that's a G root, and dominant 7s have a major 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a flat 7th, so up to the root and down 1, 2. And finally we have C major 7, so that's a C root, and it's a major 7 chord, so it has a major 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a sharp 7th, so up to the root and down 1. There are 3 very common mistakes that I see practically every student make when they first start working through this exercise. So let's go through them together so that you'll have some awareness of the errors that you are likely to make when you try this yourself. So this is a really common mistake people make when they're counting out their 3rds. So we need our roots, and then it's a major 3rd, so 4 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, did you see the mistake? I'll do an instant replay. 1. So what we're counting here is semitones above the root. So if I'm counting the root as 1, it's like I'm saying the root is 1 semitone above itself, which is madness, right? So when you're counting out your 3rds, make sure you start from a semitone above the root. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really common, that one. Look out for it. This is supposed to be an A dominant 7 chord, but there's something wrong with it. If you like, you can pause, see if you can work it out. You have 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm playing the wrong 3rd. Dominant 7 chords have a major 3rd, plus 4 semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I should be playing that. Students are way more likely to make mistakes on dominant 7 chords than they are minor 7 or major 7 chords. So they'll either play them with the wrong 3rd or the wrong 7th. So when you're tackling a new chord sequence, double check your dominant 7 chords because those are going to be the ones that trip you up 90% of the time. This is supposed to be an F sharp major 7 chord, but there's something wrong with it. See if you can work it out. You have 3, 2, 1. Everything is wrong with it because I'm playing the wrong root. I'm playing an F major 7 chord, not an F sharp major 7 chord. Students will often miss the flat and sharps that come right after the root in the chord symbol, and those flats and sharps tell you that it's a flat or sharp root. They'll often think as well that the flat and sharp is to do with the chord symbol and not the root, but that's not the case. So when reading chord symbols, watch out for flats and sharps coming right after the roots, and make sure that when they're there, you're playing a flat and sharp root, because if you get the root wrong, then everything else is going to be out of whack as well. This video is sponsored by me, specifically my one-on-one online piano teaching service. If there's anything you want to play on the piano, you can learn to do it, no matter your age, current ability or experience, and I will teach you and drill you on the practice methods that will get you there. Whether it's playing Moonlight Sonata, taking a jazz solo, or playing and singing the latest pop song, I'll give you everything you need to make your practice effective, efficient and fun.
Perhaps the most important thing that I've learned from Sam and that I really value is the practice discipline that he uses and the approach he uses to teaching and learning. It really makes learning the piano much more efficient and effective, and you can get a lot further in the time that you put in.
I haven't just learned a lot about how to learn piano. I've learned a lot about the process of learning itself.
Sam understands how adults learn and has built his teaching process around this. The process works, it really does. The better I get at the process, the faster I am learning new pieces. And to a standard I'm now happy to play to other people.
So, if you want the best online piano lessons in the world, go to pianosource.com, book a free consultation, and I look forward to meeting you. I'm going to give you a few tips for getting the most out of this exercise, and tip number 1 is do not write down the notes for the chords. The skill we're working on is memorizing the information in this table and then using it to work out chords. If we write down the notes for the chords, then we're not going to do that skill and therefore we're not going to learn it. Tip number 2 is don't play the chords in note by note like this. Instead, line up the whole chord and then when it's ready, play it as a unit. Because that's how you're going to use them in context. So we want to practice it the way that we're actually going to use it. Tip number 3 is break this exercise down and take it line by line. And if you like, you can try and do each line 3 times correct in a row before you move on to the next one. So for example, line 1, that would be D minor 7, C7, F major 7, C minor 7. Okay, that's 1 clean rep, so I'm going to move my coin to 1 to demonstrate that. C major 7, G minor 7, C7, F major 7, C minor 7. Okay, up to 2, and now let's say I made a mistake on this rep. D minor 7, G dominant 7, C major 7, but that's wrong, it should be this. Okay, I made a mistake, the coin goes to 0, and I try again. So that's how we do 3 times correct in a row. And then the final tip is do not worry about speed or timing. All that matters is that you play these chords correctly. And in order to do that, you're probably going to have to go pretty slow and deliberate. This is how I would expect somebody new to this exercise to be working through it. Okay, D minor 7, so that's going to be a D root, and it's a minor 7 chord, so it's got a minor 3rd, 1, 2, 3, and a flat 7, so up to here and down, 1, 2. Cool, okay, next chord, G dominant 7, so that's a G root, and it's a dominant 7 chord, so it's got a major 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a flat 7, so up to here and down, 1, 2. And that's totally fine, yeah? That will teach us what we need to learn. Slow and accurate is what we're going for. The last thing to mention is that when working through this exercise, we want to keep the thirds of our chords on or above C3. We do this to prevent the chords from getting too low. When chords get too low, they just lose their sound and turn into a muddy jumble of notes. For example, this is supposed to be a C major 7, but it doesn't sound like a C major 7. It just sounds like a muddy quagmire of random, unpleasant stuff, right? And that's because it's too low. This really starts to be a problem once the third gets below C3. So if we just keep the third of our chords on or above C3, we can avoid the issue of the chords getting too low and starting to not sound very good. So let's just apply this rule to the chords in this exercise. Starting with D minor 7, root, third, seventh, and the third is above C3, so this is fine. Okay, next chord, G dominant 7, root, third, seventh, and now this chord has a third which is below C3. So this is no good, we need to move this. And all we have to do is just pick it up, move it up one octave, and that's job done, right? The third is now above C3, it's that simple. Let's look at one more chord, B flat, major 7. And in this one, the root of the chord is now below C3. But that's fine because we don't care about where the root is, we only care about where the third is. The third is above C3, so this is still fine. Once we've built some familiarity with our major 7, minor 7 and dominant 7 chords, we can start to tackle the vast array of different chord symbols we'll encounter when playing actual tunes out of the real book. Let's start with the 3 basic chords and the many different forms in which they come. So major 7s, minor 7s and 7 chords make up the vast majority of the real book, but they won't always be written in their most basic form. Sometimes they're going to have extensions on the end, be part of slash chords, or they might even be written with alternative chord symbols. These extra bits will give the chord a more jazzy sound, but the good news is that the heart of the chord, its kind of quintessential sound, is contained in the root, third and seventh, which is the bit that you're learning to play. What that means is that you can ignore all that extra fancy stuff, just play the basic root, third, seventh, and things will still sound really good. So let's demonstrate this with the first 4 bars of Misty. So here we have the first 4 bars of Misty written with some slightly fancier chords. So we've got an E flat major 9, that's an alternative chord symbol. B flat minor 9, same thing. E flat 7 slash A, that's a slash chord, and an A flat major 9. So let's play that with all the fancy stuff included, just to hear what it sounds like. Okay, cool. Sounds lovely. Now, we're going to play that same segment, but this time, instead of playing those chords as their fancy versions, we're just going to play a basic root, third, seventh. Let's hear what that sounds like. Still sounds great, right? That is a totally legitimate way to play those chords. So all that extra fancy stuff, it's completely optional and we can ignore it for now and get to it when we're ready. So what we'll do now is we'll talk through how to recognize those extra bits and essentially how to ignore them and just play the basic chord in their place. Extensions are altered chord tones that are written at the end of the chord symbol. For example, sharp 11, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 5, all that kind of thing. Whenever you see an extension, you can just ignore it and play the basic chord symbol. So for example, a C major 7 sharp 11 would just be C major 7. C minor 7 flat 5, just a C minor 7 chord. And dominant chords especially will have lots of extensions attached to them on a regular basis. Flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 5, you'll see all of these on a dominant 7, sometimes together. Again, you can just ignore all that stuff and play a basic C dominant 7 chord. Slash chords are an instruction to play a specific bass note underneath the chord. So for example, C major 7 slash G wants us to play a C major 7 chord with a G in the bass. We don't really have the power to do that while also playing the melody when we're just playing these simple left-hand root third seventh shells. So that's fine, we are just going to ignore the bass part of the chord symbol. So a C major 7 over G just becomes a C major 7 chord. Easy peasy. E flat minor 7 over G flat is just E flat minor 7. Sometimes these chords are going to be written with alternative chord symbols. For example, major 7s will be written as major 9s, minor 7s might be written as minor 9s or minor 11s, and 7 chords might be written as 9s or 13s. These alternative chord symbols are just the basic chords with extensions built into them. For example, a major 9 chord is just a major 7 chord with a 9 on top. A minor 11 chord is just a minor 7 chord with a 9 and an 11. And a 13 is just a 7 chord with a 9 and a 13. When you see these alternative chord symbols, you can just play them in their basic form. So a C major 9 can be played as a C major 7, a C minor 9 or minor 11, that's just a C minor 7, and a C9 or a 13, that is just a C7. If you can't remember all that, don't worry because I've included all that info on the cheat sheet in the description. We've now covered the vast majority of chord symbols that we'll encounter when working through the real book. All that's left are the edge cases. These chord symbols will only appear once or twice in the average tune if they show up at all. And this can make them kind of awkward to learn and get familiar with, but we'll deal with that in a minute. First, let's just go through them. Let's start with major and minor triads. When you see a chord symbol that's just the root by itself, that means it's a major triad. So this would be C major. And when it's the root followed by a minor symbol, that means it's a minor triad. So this would be C minor. In most genres, you would play triads as 3-note chords, root, third, and fifth. But in jazz, it totally works to just play these as 2-note chords, just root and third. We already have a lot of stuff to worry about, so in the name of keeping things as simple as we can, we're just going to play these as 2-note chords for now, just root and third. So for a major triad, that's just root plus a major third, 1, 2, 3, 4. And for a minor triad, it's just roots plus a minor third, 1, 2, 3. Easy peasy. 6 chords feature a sixth, which is 3 semitones below the root, in place of a sharp or flat seventh. So for C major 6, that's just root and then a major third, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a sixth up to the root and down, 1, 2, 3. And for minor 6 chords, it's root, minor third, 1, 2, 3, and a sixth up to the root and down 3. Diminished 7 chords have a minor third and a double flat seventh, which, just like the sixth, is 3 semitones below the root. So for this reason, diminished 7 chords and minor 6 chords end up looking the same when you play them as root, third, and seventh shells. So for C diminished 7, that's root, then a minor third, 1, 2, 3, and a double flat seventh, so up to the root and down, 1, 2, 3. And that is the same shape that we'd use for C minor 6. 7 sus4s are dominant 7 chords where the third has been replaced with a perfect fourth, which is 5 semitones above the root. So for C7 sus4, that would be root, then a fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a flat seventh, so up to the root and down, 1, 2. And then finally, minor major 7 chords are just root, and then it's a minor third, 1, 2, 3, and a sharp seventh, up to the root and down, 1. Now, you're probably thinking, how the hell am I supposed to remember all that random information? And yeah, it seems daunting, but there is a way to get there, so let's talk about how we can achieve that. The main problem with these less common chord types is that students don't get enough chance to practice them in context, because they only sporadically turn up in actual tunes. But that's alright, because once students have nailed their major 7s, minor 7s, and dominant 7s, these less common chord symbols stop being a problem, because they're all just slight variations on those 3 basic chords. So my advice is don't worry too much about these less common chord symbols. Don't try to memorize them or spend a bunch of time drilling them. They just don't come up often enough for it to really be worth it. Instead, just download the cheat sheet I've given you in the description and have it in front of you when you're working out a new tune. When you come across a chord symbol that you can't remember how to work out, that's fine, just look it up. So if you see an F7 sus4, just check the cheat sheet. So that's going to be an F root and it's a 7 sus4. So the third is plus 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the seventh is minus 2. So up to the root and down, 1, 2. Your number one job right now is to internalize these 3 basic chords. And the best way to do that is by working through the exercise that I gave you and by learning some tunes. So last thing we'll do, let's go over how to use these chords in context and put them with a melody when playing through a lead sheet. Okay, our first chord is E flat minor 7. And a nice thing about these left hand root third seventh shells is they are normally low enough to allow us to play the melody where it's written. So let's do that. And then next we have a B flat 7 flat 9. The flat 9 is an extension, which means we can ignore it and just play a basic B flat 7 chord. E flat minor 7, A flat 7, D flat major 7, G flat 7, F minor 7, and now we come to a chord symbol that we might not recognize, E tiny circle 7. Okay, let's sort out the part of the chord that we do know how to play, the E. So we'll just line up our E root, and then we can look up that symbol on the cheat sheet. Okay, it tells us that the tiny circle is a diminished 7, and it has a minor third, 1, 2, 3, and a double flat 7. So up to the root and down, 1, 2, 3. Okay, on we go. And then E flat minor 7. And now we come to C minor 7 flat 5. Well, first things first, the flat 5 is a extension, which means we can ignore it and just play a basic C minor 7. But that brings us to another problem. The melody note of the previous bar is in the way of this chord. We can't play the chord lower, because that's just going to sound awful. So what we're going to do is just drop the 7th of the chord to make space for the melody. So like this. Just don't play the 7th, sounds totally fine. In jazz, nothing is sacred. Everything can be dropped, moved, and replaced. If we need to only play a partial chord to make room for the melody, that's fine, we can do that, it's no big deal. Okay, next we have F7 with an E flat in the melody. And again, the E flat is actually in the way of this chord because this is the 7th of this chord. So again, we just drop the 7th so that we can get the melody in there in the right hand. Okay, then we have B flat minor 7, E flat minor 7, A flat 7. Now a D flat 6. This is another chord symbol that we might not recognize, and we can just look it up. So let's sort out the root first, D flat, and then 6 chords have a major third, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 6th up to the root and down, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's play ending 2, E minor 7, A7, and then into line 3, D major 7, E minor 7, and then we come to a D slash F sharp. Okay, so slash chords, we can ignore the slash. So this is just a D chord. So again, this is an uncommon chord type. So let's sort out the root, which is going to be D. And then we can look up our chord on the cheat sheet. And it tells us that when it's just the root by itself, that is a major triad, which we can just play as a root and major third. 1, 2, 3, 4. G minor 7, C7, F sharp minor 7, B minor 7, E minor 7. And again, the melody note was in the way of this 7th. And what I did there was I just held the sustain pedal down so I could lift the melody note and make space for the chord. But I could also have just dropped that 7th. That'd be totally fine as well. A7. And now we've got a weird situation. We've got an A in the melody with a D major 7 chord over the top of it, which means that the 7th of this chord, the sharp 7th, is above the melody. And this is something that we normally wouldn't do because we want the melody to be the highest thing to help it stand out. So in this case, we would just drop this 7th and just play this chord as a root and third, like that. So let's hear that. Cool, sounds good. And then the 4th line doesn't really have any more surprises. So D minor 7, C major 7, E flat diminished 7, we did this one a minute ago, D minor 7, G7, C7, B flat B7, B flat 7, and then we're back into the A section. The last 2 lines are the same as the first 2. Apparently, you can subscribe to the channel. I know, it's interesting. There's like this big red button that's at the bottom of the video, just down there. Go on, give it a click. And then you will be subscribed.